All right. Hello and welcome to the Addicts podcast. This is episode 39. I'm your host, Jim R. And today we have Ashley S. joining us. How are you doing this morning, Ashley?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for our interview.
Me
Um,
too.
so tell us a little bit about yourself. I guess maybe start off with your childhood.
Um, I had a pretty normal childhood. Great parents, everything going for me, set up for success. Didn't really go down any bad roads. No trauma to speak of or anything like that. Um, just a pretty great childhood overall.
That's good. You don't hear that a lot. You had both parents, I'm assuming.
Yes.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mom is a dietitian and my dad had his own business.
Okay. So at what age did you first start using?
I first tried drugs when I was about 16. Um, I didn't use on a regular, like hardcore basis until I was in my 20s.
What was the reason for trying it when you were 16? Was it peer pressure or
Yeah, just, at a party, just doing what everybody else was doing.
being a kid?
Yeah,
So how was your childhood growing up as far as school and friends and all that great stuff?
it was good. Always made good grades. Had a lot of friends, played a lot of sports, stayed pretty busy, pretty active. Um, really enjoyed myself growing up.
So you did it at a party, you said, or it's just something, a situation like that. Do you remember how it made you feel? How it made you feel when you drank or did you smoke? I forget. I didn't ask that.
Yeah, that was just smoking marijuana
Okay.
at a party. And it was just, you know, kind of that happy, relaxed, giggly feeling.
Mhm. Anything specific you remember about it? Was it a good feeling or did you feel
Yeah,
shame and
it
guilt
was,
afterwards?
no, I mean, it was a good feeling, but at that point in my life, it was a take it or leave it kind of thing. Um, it wasn't a serious habit at that point.
What kind of student were you in school?
I was always a straight A student.
Oh, so you did very good in school.
Mhm.
And what age did you first take a drink?
Probably 14.
So it was earlier than the marijuana,
Yes.
and that was the same situation, just kids being kids.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it just gave you a happy-go-lucky feeling.
Yeah, just something different.
Yeah, I mean, I remember for me, it made me feel normal. It made me feel
Yeah.
like I could relax for finally. Like I don't know, it just made me feel
Yeah,
normal.
exactly. Like I could, I wasn't so stressed. I know at that young of an age, you think stress, how can you be stressed? But it was just like I was always tense.
Exactly, that's the exact word. You just finally relaxed. It felt like
Hmm.
wow, just a load off your shoulders, like good old-fashioned saying.
Yeah.
So what age did you say it became a problem? So that started in your early 20s?
Let me see, I'm 37 now. It's about my mid 20s. Um, and that was when I picked up methamphetamine habit. Um, and that got pretty serious pretty quick.
And had that all come about?
Just somebody had it around. I'd never tried it and thought I'd try it. And boy, I just thought that was the best thing ever. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Was that the first hard drug you ever tried, or were you known to party?
No, I'd done ecstasy a couple of times. I tried cocaine once. But yeah, that's about it as far as the hard drugs go.
Who was the first person you used the methamphetamines with?
Um, I had a couple, married couple friend. that lived fairly close to me, and I was over at their house helping them move, and they had some and we just tried it.
Would you smoke it?
Yeah,
How'd it make you feel?
extremely good, energized, like I could take on the world, you know?
Yeah, I never did meth personally, but I did do a lot of what is it called? Oh, Adderall, which is
Yeah.
it's an amphetamine.
Yeah,
But I've heard people say they could be somewhat similar in the effects.
somewhat. Yeah.
So at what point did you so when you first started using, was it always with somebody? So how did your
Yeah.
actual your problem progress? How did it
It
go?
was always with somebody, you know, I always did it with somebody. It wasn't for about probably a year that I started doing it on my own.
And what were you doing for a living at the time? You working at the time?
No,
So you had a lot of time to party.
yeah, absolutely. Too much free time. Idle hands with the devil's workshop.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely is. The other saying, idle mind is the devil's playground. Same difference. I hear that.
Yeah.
That's what I remember my mom telling me when I was younger. One of the interesting thing I learned about the Amish people is one of the reasons they're so kind of against coming getting to the new age is it doing their routine keeps them going nice and slow and steady, and it keeps your brain busy throughout the entire day.
Yeah,
They don't have much.
absolutely.
They don't have much downtime because they're always working.
Absolutely. I can totally relate. I'm a workaholic.
Yep, completely random, but that's why they do it.
Yeah.
So, what were your relationships like when you were younger? Boyfriends, girlfriends, friends? Did you have
I
anything going?
had my first love, I guess you'd say, I was with for about 8 years. We got together when I was 16. Um, After that, there wasn't anything real serious for a while. Then once the drugs came into the picture, I got with somebody, you know, that had connections and, you know, could do things I couldn't do.
Is that what you were looking for in a relationship?
No. That was just what I was looking for to get what I needed, you know. It was convenient.
How long were you in that relationship? 8 years?
No. That one lasted about a year and a half.
About a year and a half. And that was just to get your drugs.
Basically.
What was the relationship like? Was it I mean,
You know, honestly, it was more like a friendship. I
yeah.
mean, that was basically it. We used together, we hung out together, but I mean, it didn't go much beyond that.
So with the relationships, were you going from one to the next? Were you like when you were looking like and when you weren't with someone, were you looking for someone else who was also had access to drugs?
No, I was still young at the time, and I wasn't on the hunt for anybody by any means.
How did you get your own drugs then?
Um, I pretty quickly got into selling, and that's how I made my money and supported myself and got my drugs.
Tell us more about selling.
Um, I was never into it really big, just enough to support my habit and support my basic needs. Didn't move a whole lot of it, just minimal amounts, you know, to people I knew, people close around. Um, all the big stuff was handled by my supplier. So I was just a low person on the totem pole, I guess you'd say.
What kind of weight were you selling?
Um, at the most a couple of grams, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, not anything huge. Just like I said, enough to get what I needed.
How long did that go on for?
About 2 years.
And what age were you when you started selling the drugs?
Let's see, 25, 26.
So it's right when everything started then. That's right around the time you
Yeah,
said that you're,
yeah, it was, I mean, it came along pretty quickly.
was that part of the things that got you addicted so fast, but you had such good, such quick access to it?
Yeah, I mean, that didn't hurt anything, it's pretty readily available. So
And during this whole time, where were you living when you were like, it seems pretty young to be doing all this stuff with no mom or dad saying anything about it.
I would just, stay. We shared an apartment, and
Who's
that
we?
was my supplier. We shared an apartment,
And
and
how old were you when you lived with your supplier?
it was about 26.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And he was a guy that I, knew from way back. I'd gone to school with, and so we just had ties already. So, I guess it worked out for the both of us. I
Yeah,
guess you could say.
tell us more about the relationship with him.
That wasn't anything beyond a friendship.
Must have been a good friendship if you guys were living together.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't share a bedroom or anything, but
Well, I'm just saying, even just for people just living together, usually they got a
yeah,
pretty solid bond.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, we had known each other from back in school, so we knew each other prior. So we already had an established friendship.
So tell us a little bit more about when the drug use picked up. What age would you say really started becoming? I mean, obviously it's always a problem, but when did it really hit you that it's a problem? And give us some
It
details on that.
it is, and honestly, for that 2.5 years, it was a lot of blur. It may have started about 24 and went on to I was about 26, 27. And that was pretty much the extent of it, fortunately. But it was just all in. I jumped in head first and never looked back, so to speak.
What age?
I used to, prior to that, I worked as an EMT. And my partner on the ambulance was found dead from an overdose. Nobody knew he was using, nothing like that. And it was just a total shock to me. And I'd never used hard drugs before that. And
He died at home.
mm-hmm,
He was your partner you were an EMT.
mm-hmm. And I think, I guess it was a way to cope on down the road, because it just it was probably about a year and a half after that started.
It's gonna be a
Because
scary thing.
I left the EMS field when that happened. I couldn't bring myself to go back. And I guess, growing up, I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an EMT. I wanted to work on the ambulance. And I was kind of disillusioned, I guess. I was like, this is what I've wanted to do my whole life. Now what am I supposed to do? And I was lost, and just went down the wrong road.
That must be rough knowing someone that's pretty close to you like that dies from something that you're doing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you would think it would be the total opposite, that I wouldn't want to touch any kind of stuff like that. But I guess I was looking for comfort anywhere,
So it drove you into more drinking and drugs or more drug. So were you ever drinking at all? So,
No, not really. Just and he actually died of a heroin overdose.
okay.
It wasn't any methamphetamine or anything like that. So, but no, it wasn't like excessive using of everything. It was just that came along, and you know, that consumed my life. That was all I cared about. I wanted to escape the feelings I had. I wanted to escape what I was going through, and that let me do it.
Yeah. So a lot of us addicts are looking for is an escape.
Absolutely.
It must be rough living with someone that can get you what you want at any time. Also, I'm lucky. I never had like any really close friends that supplied me with my stuff. I mean, I did, but it was easy to get away from them because they weren't, I guess, as good friends as I thought. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, do you have any crazy stories or anything that you want to share as far as from when during your abuse and those days? A lot of people have some types of stories they have.
You know, I just, my parents did intervene at one point, and I just remember them coming in a house that I was just staying in. It wasn't that apartment. My dad, two of my brothers, and a neighbor came in and literally picked me up and dragged me out kicking and screaming. And I didn't care. I didn't want to go with them. I wanted to stay and do what I was doing. But they were determined they were going to get me away from it, no matter what it took. Eventually, I did go back to it after that. But it did, that started the snowball effect of them really actively trying to get me out of that lifestyle.
Once they took you out of that house, what did they do with you? Did they try to bring you to a rehab?
No, they just, my close family sat down and pretty much gave me an ultimatum. It's either the drugs or us. And I walked out the door, walked away, and went back to it for a little while, until I got to the point. I remember vividly just sitting there crying and praying to God to get me away from that life, to get me away. Like I'd, walked away from my family, alienated them. I was not in good health, was making bad decisions. And I wanted to get away. And I just cried and I prayed. And I picked up the phone and called one of my best friends and said, "Can you come pick me up?" And that was the beginning of getting sober for me.
So
But I had to do it. I had to do it on my terms. I wasn't going to do it till I was ready to walk away. But that was the beginning.
Isn't that such a sad truth of us addicts is that we don't do anything until we're ready? And this is the reason I say the sad truth is so many of us die before we're ready.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But fortunately I didn't. I got lucky. There were a lot of times I should have ended up dead in the ditch somewhere for some of the stupid things I did, some of the stupid decisions I made. But God has a purpose, and I definitely had people watching over me.
So when you say that was the beginning of your getting better, what did you do to get better? Did you go to rehab? Did you go to 28-day stay or?
I did not. I never went to a rehab. She took me home with her. I left everything I owned in that apartment. Took a few clothes with me, and went to her house and detoxed pretty much. And then went and stayed with another friend for a couple weeks, and then went back home to my parents.
Your parents took you back in, no questions asked.
Yeah, they did. I was very lucky.
So I understand that you are in the mental health profession now.
Yes.
So what do you do exactly?
Um, I'm a mental health technician. Basically, we do observation rounds on all the patients. We maintain the milieu, the units, basically anything and everything our patients need, we take care of, aside from medications and stuff like that.
Okay.
Take them to meals, get them showered and all that stuff, just basically day-to-day stuff, getting them to groups, things like that. Just basically keeping them on schedule for the day and keeping them safe.
Do you enjoy that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. Because we are there for people in their most vulnerable time, and we get to lead by example, I guess. We get to teach them, we get to help them. And for me, I struggle with mental health. I've never been in a facility, but I've been through a lot of the stuff they're going through. And I know exactly how they're feeling. And to be able to relate on that kind of level is amazing, because not a lot of people can, not everybody can relate to them on the level that I can. And it gives me a chance to use what I've been through to help somebody else. The struggles I've had with it, I can say, hey, this is what I found success with, things like that. Just, gives me a chance to tell my story on a daily basis and say, hey, don't make the mistakes I did.
So how long in total were you actually on doing drugs? How long would you say? Was it like a 10-year run or?
No, like hard and heavy, it was only about 2.5 years.
Okay.
Just short. I mean, all things considered.
So do you think, I don't know if you know the difference. If you want, I can explain if you don't, but do you think you were a drug abuser or a drug addict?
Both. Both, honestly.
What happens is, so an abuser, this is what I've read in some of the textbooks. An abuser is someone that they use drugs. They do everything an addict does. But when you give them a reason to quit, they quit. So an example of a drug abuser or an alcohol abuser is a college kid. He drinks every day in college. But the
Mhm.
second he gets out of college and he has a real job waiting for him, he's got to quit drinking. He just stops. So he's classified as an abuser. An alcoholic cannot stop.
Right,
Even when they are given a good reason, they don't stop and they can't stop.
right.
So it sounds like you might have been given a reason and you stopped. So maybe you were
The
in the
the
either way, they're both
only
bad.
the only reason I say addict is because when I look back, growing up, my parents always had very high expectations for me, and it was out of nothing but love. They wanted me to be successful. But my interpretation of that was I had to be perfect. I took it to the extreme. And so those behaviors were there long before drugs ever came into the picture. Go big or go home. And that's the way it was for me. And just about everything I did.
So you think the go big or go home mentality helped lead to your drug addiction? Is that what you're saying?
I think it led to the behavior and why it got to the level it did so fast.
Okay.
I found something I liked and I dove in head first, and threw away anything and everything that mattered to me. I remember my mom sitting there crying and telling me, I don't believe in suicide, but I wish I was dead. So I didn't have to see you live like this. So
Those must have
I
been
don't
some
know.
powerful words.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll never, I remember it like it was yesterday. Um, but you know, it made an impact on me. While at the time, right then, right there, I didn't quit, but those words were never far from my mind. You know, that kind of set the ball rolling and things started weighing heavier on my mind about the decisions I was making and the people I was hurting and how bad I was hurting myself.
So you said you had some suicidal thoughts.
Um, at one point towards the end, I did. I never had like a plan to act on them or anything. I just thought, you know, I'd rather be dead than live like this.
But you never put any plans into action, thank goodness.
No, I did not.
So what did you do to actually get yourself sober? Was there a particular program you used? Did you go through a 12-step program? Did you go
I
through?
did. I went to AA actually because NA in my town was not a very good program at the time. So I went to AA. And just like my addiction, I got into it, jumped in head first, hard and heavy, you know, lots of meetings, working with sponsors, you know, doing everything I could. Um, you know, I did slip up a couple of times, but you know, I always went right back to just wanting to be sober.
What do you
Um,
think led to your slips?
I don't know, honestly. That's something I guess I've never really thought about. I don't know if it was just the familiarity of it, you know. That was what I'd known for the past few years. Or, you know, hey, maybe I can do it and it won't be as bad this time. But that was not the case. Um,
Familiarity is a big one. I remember one of the things I was saying, like right before I was going to rehab, was part of my language. What the fuck am I going to do? Like, drugs and alcohol have been part of my life for 20 years. It was like, well, what do I do on a Saturday night? What do I do before a movie? What do I do after a movie? What do I do before I go to bed? What do I do after I get up in the morning? Because
yeah,
everything that was all about drugs and alcohol. Towards the
yeah.
end, I was literally getting up, and it's actually like I've heard the saying, before my feet hit the ground. It's true. Before my feet literally hit the ground, I would be pouring myself a glass of wine while I was still laying in bed and smoke a cigarette, and then start my day.
I see, like alcohol, marijuana, were always in and out of my life since my teen years. But it never turned into an abusive kind of behavior. It was just, you know, the
Some people are
marijuana
like
was
that.
more because I could relax, you know. It was before I got any kind of psychiatric medications to deal with my depression and anxiety. Um, so that was always a take it or leave it kind of thing. But methamphetamine was a whole different ballgame. I lived and breathed that. I mean, that was all I cared about.
And you were self-sustaining. You were selling it to make the money to pay for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, what do you do to stay sober?
I stay active in recovery groups online. I'm an admin for one on Facebook. I stay pretty active in that. Um, I still read a lot of AA material. Um, try to get to any resource I can, you know, outside of going to meetings because I'm a single mom and I work 50 to 60 hours a week. So I don't have a lot of time on my hands. Um, but to be honest with you, work gives me a chance to share my experience. We get a lot of detox patients in there and stuff like that. And I get to use my experience to help them. And that I found to be is one of the most healing things that I could ever have in my life. To be able to share my experience, strength, and hope with someone else who's suffering, in hopes that it may help them. And that's, I don't know, there's not any feeling like it in the world, that probably 7 years into sobriety, I could never get rid of the guilt and the shame. I could never get past that. I wouldn't forgive myself for the mistakes I made. And about 6 months after I started working there, it finally hit me that I was helping people because of my experience. And because I was able to help people, I was able to let that go and forgive myself.
Yeah, helping other people could be a big thing.
Yeah, it's huge.
And also you're saying get to share your story. For some reason that helps us stay sober.
Absolutely. Reminds us of where we came from, keeps us on our toes about what keeps us going. And not only do I get to share recovery, I get to share the mental health struggles I had as well. So, it's an all around win for me. That is where, I remember it hit me one day. This is where I was meant to be, and this is what I was meant to do. It gives me purpose in my life. And I felt I had lost that purpose when I left EMS. I'd lost that purpose.
It's a great feeling to have purpose, to feel like you have found your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a hard job. It's a stressful job. It's a crazy job. Violence at times. I've been bit. I've been hit, all kinds of things. But
not too many things, but tell us about the time you got bit. What happened there?
We had to restrain a patient to give them medications, and the person that was holding the upper part of the body didn't have a good enough hold, and I was holding the legs, and she got loose and just bent over and bit me right on the shoulder blade.
Ooh. It hurt a lot. Oh, people don't realize how strong the human jaw is.
At the time, I didn't even know I got bit, but we finally got the medications administered, and I get up out of the floor, and coworkers are like, let me see your shoulder. I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, she bit you. And I was like, what? Fortunately, she bit through my scrubs. She barely broke the skin, but she did bite hard enough, it knocked her tooth off.
Really?
It did. It was a crazy experience. And I saw her a few days after that, and she had absolutely no memory of what happened.
That's another thing you gotta give people like you credit for, is because you can't. It's actually part of the recovery program. No resentments. You can't hang on to resentment, especially in your field, because a lot of people don't know what they're doing when they do it.
Absolutely. And the transformation that we get to see in these people from the time they come in to the time they leave is just absolutely amazing. Not 100% of the time, but for the most part, we see huge transformations in people, and you see people get their life back. People get their sanity back, literally, and it's just, there's not an experience like it in the world.
What's like a good success story you've seen in there?
I did have a patient, had been coming to that hospital since he was a kid. They used to have a kids unit there. They don't anymore. By the time I encountered him, he was an adult, and I'd seen him a couple times in there. We talked a lot about life, about recovery, about a lot of things, and I share a lot of my stories with him. And he told me, he said, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to make something of my life. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to be somebody. And to this day, he's in school, doing well, and has not been back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's amazing to see people be able to overcome the obstacles that they have, and know that they can manage that kind of stuff, that
You
they don't
gotta have,
have to suffer the rest of their lives.
yeah. And people like you have to have that something extra inside of themselves, because you're seeing people at their worst. I mean, like you said, I
Absolutely.
mean, for the love of God, you got bit. That's not a fun experience.
It's not, but doesn't happen every day, and in 2.5 years is the only time I've been bit. It's just, it comes with the job. I hate to say it, but I had a coworker clean up my shoulder and bandage it and went right back to work. It's just, it's just, I knew what I was getting into when I started working there. Um, but we just have to keep in mind that they don't, most of the time, don't even realize what they're doing. They're not themselves, and we can't hold that against them.
Yeah, I believe personally, I think mental health has so much more to do with addiction than people lead on. I think
Oh, absolutely. They
this guy,
self-medicating.
exactly, this, I'm not sure if you've read him or seen any like TED Talks by him, but this, I've mentioned him a few times in my podcast, Gabor Mate. He believes everything's based on trauma.
Mm-hmm.
There's a level of trauma that you experience basis on, like, the level of cravings and the level of suffering you go through in life and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a big deal. That's a big thing.
It
And
is. We see a lot of people self-medicating,
it's
and it's hard,
self-medication is a big
for
one.
different reasons. No insurance, no money, all
Yep.
different reasons. Not that they want to. They're just trying to cope.
Like, I used to get high off them. I'm not gonna lie. I would snort them, do whatever with the Adderalls. But then eventually, at the end, I wasn't abusing them. I actually, for some reason, I don't know what happened. I just became a mainline drunk. That's all I did. Um, but I would still take those once or twice a day. But it was basically just as a doctor I would prescribe.
Right.
It was literally just because I have ADHD. I mean,
Right.
I won't take them nowadays, but I got other medicines for that stuff. It's not narcotic.
Mm-hmm. They sure do. Mental health is its own beast, and I think it gets overlooked a lot in the people that struggle with addiction. And one thing, as a teenager, suffered from depression and anxiety. But it wasn't until after the hard drug use that I was diagnosed as bipolar and that kind of stuff. So, and PTSD and stuff like that. So, I think it definitely does. Drugs do they mess with your brain, and they do damage. I'm living
Yeah,
proof of
absolutely.
that. Living
Yeah,
proof.
absolutely. So getting towards the end here, did you have anything that you want anyone to know about you, that maybe anything that I looked over, didn't ask, and any kind of message you want to get out there?
You know, there's always hope for anybody and everybody that wants it. I mean, like you said, it has to be us that wants it. Um, but I don't want people to feel like they're alone and they have to suffer alone. You know, um, I want people to know that there's support out there, there's help, there's people. Um, and it can be conquered. It absolutely can be conquered. And, it's going to be the hardest fight of your life, 100%. But it's so worth it. To not only get your life back, but, like I said, find your purpose, um, and start to build the kind of life you had always wanted. Unfortunately for me, my drug use came before marriage and children. My daughter has never had to see me high, and I'm extremely grateful for that. Um, I know a lot of people who had kids present when that was going on.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank God. My daughter never had to see that. But the biggest thing is I don't want people to ever lose hope, because it's out there. You got to want it, but it's out there. And it's so worth it. It's My life is blessed beyond belief. Better than I could have ever imagined, better than my wildest dreams, and addiction and recovery are a huge part of that. Those bad parts of my life help make me who I am today. They shape the person I am today. And without them, I wouldn't be the same.
That's a good message. Yeah, hope is a huge thing. It's definitely something you don't want to lose. And it's good to let other people know that there is hope out there.
Because I felt hopeless, that time I was crying and praying to God. I felt hopeless, absolutely hopeless. I thought I'm not going to make it out of this. And something told me to pick up the phone and call somebody, and I did. That's when the table started to turn. But being hopeless is one of the worst feelings in the world. You feel like you're the only person on the face of the earth, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. It's nothing but darkness for the rest of your life. You're isolated, you're lonely, you're cut off from the entire world. And I think that's, what finally got to me. I had to hit that bottom to really realize what I had done to my life. And it wasn't a life anymore. It was an existence.
It's a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it. It's no longer a life. It's just an existence.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate you coming on, Ashley.
Thank you.
No, it was really awesome speaking with you.
Thank you
So
for the
now
opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And my little sales pitch here is, so if you like what you heard, please go below and click subscribe. Also give us a like. You can check us out on our Facebook page. We have a Facebook group. On the page, if you go under the events tab, you'll see all the Zoom meetings we have available. This is going to be available on YouTube, Spotify, Patreon, iPodcasts. Also go to iTunes and give us a rating there as well. That's all I got for today. I want to thank Ashley again, and until next time.